Chapter 7, Access Control Systems Implementation. Learning objectives and key concepts. Learning objectives. Implement appropriate access controls and identify and identity management techniques with IT infrastructures. Key concepts. Guidelines and procedures based on standards and policies, identity management and access control, multi-layer access control, access controls for internal and remote employees, customers and business partners, federated identities, and third party. Transforming access control policies, standards, procedures, and guidelines. Begin the formal process with a plan. Determine which policies and standards you will reference. Determine how you will make the process and implementation easy. Come up with effective ways to ensure everyone understands. Transfer policy definitions into implementation. Tasks. Policy. Organizations must ensure all employer-owned computer equipment are secure. Standard. Organizations may follow implementation ISO 27002. Guidelines. Organizations recommend passwords be a minimum of 8 to a maximum of 16 characters and follow the steps in password creation. Approaches. Implementing access control. Phased approach starts at the beginning and works through the end, but only one section of the project at a time. Prioritization. Administration deals with procedures and network changes on a case-by-case basis. Implementation. What is the mission of the implementation? What are the factors needed to ensure the policy is met? Which tools will you need to address the access control, secure communication, and authentication? How will the methods be implemented? How will these access, secure communications, and authentication measures be tested? How often will policies be reviewed? Follow standards where applicable. IEEE, National Institute of Standards and Technology, Federal Information Security Management Act, ISO, Internet Engineering Task Force, PCI Security Standards, Center of Internet Security. IEEE is a non-profit organization that's created over 1,100 information technology standards. The National Institute of Standards and Technology is a non-regulatory federal agency under the U.S. Department of Commerce. Mission is to promote U.S. innovation and industry competitiveness by advancing measurement, science, standards, and technology, and ways to enhance economic security and improve quality of life. Federal Information Security Modernization Act sets to security requirements for all federal agencies. ISO, the largest publisher of international standards, works with public and private sectors. The Internet Engineering Task Force is an international organization focused on the Internet and Internet protocols. PCI Security Standards Council, PCI-SSC, established for developing, managing, educating, and providing awareness for payment card industry. PCI Security Standards. Data Security Standards, Payment Application Data Security Standards, and PIN Entry Device Requirements. Payment Cards, Industry Data, Security Standards for Security Management, Policies and Procedures, Network Architect, Software Design, and other protective measures. Centers of Internet Security is a non-profit independent community of professionals providing best practices, standards for security, confirmation of network devices. Professionals establish the following benchmarks detailing best practices, security configuration for IT systems. Benchmark audit tools to assess systems in compliance with benchmark and security best practices. Matrices to collect and analyze data on security processes and performance outcomes. Create simple and easy to follow procedures, converting policies into implementation. Step 1, identify the policy that addresses your needs. Step 2, compare the current system to the system described in policy. Step 3, perform a gap analysis to understand which steps need to be implemented. Policy, standards, procedures, guidelines. Define guidelines that department and business users can follow. Guidelines are optional actions or controls that are based on policy, standards, and procedures. Are recommendations that best practices that are provided by a standard of bodies, NIST, ISO, and CIS. Assist in educating administrators. Identify what is expected to ensure compliance with policies and standards. Security measures must be accepted by both technical and non-technical parties. Broad-based security training benefits everyone. Identify management and access control. Involves creating accounts for all users across all systems they interact with a coordinating those accounts so that changes are reflected across the system. Main benefit is a clean integration with organization's access control system. User behavior, applications, and network analysis. By understanding normal behavior, you are able to detect activities that are unusual. User behavior and application analysis provides data needed to ensure systems are available. Network analysis provides details on both user and application as well as network traffic. Monitor library access. Track digital library uses an ensemble of administrators to build a user profile based on composite data usage. Behavior analysis of users, applications, and network activities assist in identity and access management. Identifies access controls that are not functioning correctly and lets an administrator know if the changes are needed. Can provide access to set up correctly because network patterns and accesses are working as planned. Combining behavior analysis and identify and access management provides a blueprint for the network regarding normal behavior. Size and distribution of staff assets. Creating a complete inventory of IT assets is one of the first steps in implementing access control. Access control systems should be based on the risk against the data and network access. Be aware of which assets are available and where assets are located. Have tools available so administrator can manage any size staff and assets. Multi-layer access control implementation. Defense and in-depth mechanisms, stronger protection for the network and users. Roadblocks for users and attackers. Create by segmenting users and servers. Create logical through VLANs, virtual LAN networks. User access profiles. Users access profiles, identity, authorization allows for each user. Implement users access control profiles with role-based access control. Role-based access control manages the infrastructure with greater control. Implements for a large group that performs similar tasks. Saves times by ensuring all controls are applied to a particular role. System access control list. Identify which users have access to the systems and what rights they have with each other's access. Policy, enforcement, designated file types, trusted publisher. Categories. The diagram just shows the different access counts. Policies, local policies, window defenders, networks, security levels, and so on. Enforcement properties. Apply software enforcement properties. You can check all users, ignore certificates, and so on. Designated file types, so we can say who the following files types are considered to be executable codes, so we need to mark those. Trusted publisher. Application access. DB creator can create databases and alter and restore its own database. Server admin can change service-wide configurations, options, and shut down servers. Systems admin can perform an activity in the server. Files and server file and folder access. If users are not given access to certain applications, access to the location of the data may be limited as well. Assigning controls to files and folders adds another layer of multi-layer structure. Limiting read and write access to files and folders ensures the data cannot be compromised. Limited privileges to whom and what you can access specific files and folders. Assign privileges based on needs. File system access. Data access. Limit access to data is your last method of protection of data. Read or write privilege is an example of a security measure placed against data. Database applications such as SQL Server provide controls to limit access to data. Access controls for employees, remote employees, customers, and business partners. Virtual private networks, intranet, extranet, secure e-commerce sites with encryption, secure online banking access control implementation, login/passwords access, identification, imaging, and authorization. Remote virtual networks access remote employees. It helps reduce cost, improve flexibility, provide secure communications. Authentication methods incorporating a multi-factor authentication method adds extra level of security for gaining access to corporate networks. Memberships and groups. Creating a group-based or user role ensures that the customer and business partners have access only to a specific file and application. VPN communication. It locks out anyone who doesn't belong. Intranets, internal business operations and communications, company directories, company locations and directions, organizational charts, corporate announcements, search capabilities for corporate. Extranets and external suppliers, business partners, distributors, and resellers. Extend the intranet in a limited fashion, expand usage and availability of intranet, security provide via isolation, access control, authentication, and encryption, provide remote access to only the limited portion of the company's infrastructure that are provided for third party, limit access to specific resources. Secure e-commerce sites with encryption. Web server sends its digital certificates to the web browser. Web browsers extract the web server public key. Web browser verifies that the web server certificate. Web browsers generate a random symmetric encryption key used to encrypt the conversation between the web browser and the web server. Web browser sends the wrapped key to the web server. The web server decrypts the wrapped key with its private key. Secure online banking access control. The Federal Financial Institute Examination Council, body of the U.S. government that provides standards for financial institutions, provides standards and best practices to financial institutions for security strategies, administration access, ensuring secure access over multi-layers to protect against unauthorized access, remote access. Login, password access, online banking sites, multiple mode authentication, strict password policies, access control reduces security risk, single factor authentication is insufficient. Identification, imaging, and authorization. Online banking portals may provide secondary tactics for users to verify their communications have not been hijacked. A second authorization identification provides secondary layer. Custom images, custom phrases, or PIN numbers. The Federation identification and third-party identity services. Security assertion marked up language. An approach used by websites where the user attempts to access a website and is redirected to their identity provider for authentication. OpenID Connect. An alternative to the security assertion marked up language that works in a similar manner from the user's perspective, but includes a process where the user is asked to consent to sharing a specific attribute before they provide that to the service. And the shibboleth, an implementation, the SAM, that is widely used among educational. Best practices for access control implementation. Understanding the roles within the organization, understanding that data that resides on the network, establish a baseline. Monitor activities on a continuous basis, create guidelines and policies that are easy to understand and implement, manage users' accounts appropriately, manage remote access capabilities, provide strong security. Case files and examples. Private sector, small tax filing companies, administrators need to ensure that certain contractors have access to the state and federal forms and that the contractors has access to only the state returns. Implements multi-layer access controls to ensure contractors can view the files only when they need to know. Public sector, U.S. government, decentralized management or user credentials. Time-consuming, expensive, and attackers can move from one system to the other without detection. Security leaders collaborate on the creation of a centralized identity. Critical infrastructure. Reliant a large healthcare facility wants to upgrade its paper record-keeping system with an electronic version, uses access to control to implement a more secure infrastructure to protect confidentiality, information, and upgrade network configurations. Summary: guidelines and procedures based on standards and policies, identity management and access control, multi-layer access control for internal and remote users, customers, and business partners, Federation identities, and third parties.